So what I would hope for the industry is that more lawyers are doing things where after you do the work, yes, you can be a little bit mentally tired from like the effort, but do you feel emotionally lifted? I am going to feel more emotionally lifted after this conversation than before, because I love this kind of thing. And so that's what I would hope for more lawyers, is to feel like, do a sense check, a pulse check on the work that you do, and notice when you feel more emotionally lifted after doing the work. I think that would make for a better industry and happier lawyers.
Welcome to Legal Off the Leash, the podcast where we take the legal profession out of the box and into a happier and more fulfilling future.
We're your hosts, Scott Simmons and Elizabeth de Stadler. On today's episode, we're talking to Chad Aboud, the Chief Commercial Officer of Goodlawyer. Chad brings together seasoned lawyers with incredible companies to deliver customized and flexible legal expertise that drives businesses forward. Chad has shared his insights on how to intentionally design meaningful careers and teams with individuals and organizations around the world, including Google and on the TEDx stage. He's the host of the What You're About podcast and is a former general counsel and lawyer in a national law firm. Chad, welcome to Legal Off the Leash.
Oh, thank you both for having me. That intro almost sounded like I wrote it and sent it to you. That was a really nice intro, Scott. I appreciate you.
No. Don't give that away, Chad. We're trying to make out like we've put the effort in here.
Yeah, it was so smooth and sounded so authentic, not like I had written it and sent it to you, that I just really, it touched me.
Right, so Chad, we're going to get into things like your TEDx talk, which was just phenomenal. The things that you talk about day to day, week to week on LinkedIn, the impact that you're having, which I think is phenomenal. But kind of take us back a bit, give us your background, give us a bit about that buy in a bit more detail, so people can get to know a bit more about you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Honored to be with you guys here, and everything that you're building makes it more fun. So appreciate you for making the industry a better, warmer place. So I'm in Toronto, Canada. That's where I went to law school. When I started law school, I watched Matlock as a kid. And so I don't know, maybe you two are familiar with Matlock. And I was like, solve the crime, get a hot dog, wear the gray suit every day. They admit it on the stand. They're beautiful. I want to do this. And so that's why I went to law school, only to very quickly find out that this did not feel like what I was going to be doing. And I didn't really like law school that much. First semester was really hard. It just felt awkward. It's nothing like what I had felt academically. And so my law school had a bunch of joint programs, and one was with the business school. And so I was like, 100% finals. That's how law school is in Canada and in North America, typically, at least it was back then too, is that doesn't feel like real life. You're by yourself all the time. And then you just regurgitate information from the person's summary from the year before you. And then hopefully you write it the way the prof wants you to write it. It just didn't make sense to me. The business school was okay, so a whole bunch of people from different backgrounds are trying to solve a real life problem. And then they got to present it, and you got to figure out who's leading different parts and who's supporting. This made a lot more sense to me. And so I did that, but in Canada, you still have to article. And so it's kind of that 1 year right before they officially name you a lawyer. I'm convinced it's just because they want to pay people less for doing what a first year lawyer does. I don't know. In the States, they got rid of this a long time ago. So you are kind of pushed into the lawyer track. And so this was what kind of dragged me into being a lawyer. And now I'm looking back over kind of 15 years and realizing that I don't think I ever really was meant to be a lawyer. It was something I could do well, but not something I think I was uniquely placed to do. And I'm a very relational person. I'm very motivated by impact and fulfillment. And so I think that was not a great starting point, because the river's fast, right? You graduate law school, you go into the law firm recruitment, they have the most jobs, they're paying the most money, it's the most prestigious, the current is very fast. And so that's how I started my career, was you do this joint program, you're getting introduced to all the big national firms that are headquartered in Toronto, and you're doing the interviews, and then you get a job. And so I'll put a pin in it there, but that was what pulled me into the industry, was how do I do the thing that I think I'm supposed to do, which is big company corporate law at, one of the biggest firms I can find. It wasn't that thoughtful. It was Matlock tricked me, and then I just ended up there.
So then you've gone into the law, and you talk about uncovering your natural gifts. There's so much from your TEDx talk actually that I want to talk about. And it's actually brilliant, because Elizabeth's having connectivity problems, which means I'm going to genuinely be able to just talk to you so much without Elizabeth getting annoyed at me. She'll get annoyed with the connectivity problems that she's having, and I'll just keep butting in before she gets the chance to actually say anything. But so I desperately want to talk about some of the things that you talk about in that TEDx talk. You talk about uncovering your natural gifts, okay? And in that talk that you gave, which was the power of doing your hard thing, not just any hard thing, you referred to natural gifts as one of two key building blocks. Tell us more about that.
I think what frustrated me, so, I had a grandfather of mine who passed away as I was going through that law firm recruitment process, kind of like a low education, high relational entrepreneur. And I'd only see him a few times a year because he lived in Montreal and we'd go and visit him. But what I always noticed was the impact that he made on his community and his family and on me was it wasn't about buying me things. Like all my memories with him are being in his house and him telling me stories and meeting his friends and going to his vegetable garden in the backyard. It was very impactful on me. And I was struggling, I think, in BigLaw because I was doing corporate finance and M&A for public companies. This is as busy a legal practice as you can do in terms of quantum of time. And what I was finding was I was just continually hitting these milestones of like, you're good enough, you're working hard enough, you're nice enough, this is great, you're projecting. But I was looking back over my entire life and I was saying, boy, I've really been living this milestone life for a long time. And I don't think I've ever really been that fulfilled. I think I was like proud of my effort, proud of my achievements. But when my grandfather passed away, I thought to myself, like when he closed his eyes for the long sleep, I thought he lived a life that he probably should have lived. Like I felt sad that I was losing him, but I didn't feel badly for him. And I thought to myself, I don't think I'd feel like that. Like, I think I would feel a lot of regret. And that's just really not how I wanted to live. And so it wasn't so refined at the time, but I did feel like when I was in BigLaw that like you're doing a good job and you know where this path goes, you don't really like it that much. You're not impacting the industry or anyone around you by doing this work so uniquely. And I think for me, maybe it's because I'm a Pisces, maybe because like relationships are the most motivating thing for me. That was a little bit disturbing. And I think I felt like I'd be a little bit mad at myself if the long sleep came real quick. I just didn't want to wait. And so I think that was the beginning of like, what is wrong here? This is where you're supposed to be. And something felt off. So like that was the beginning of what is this supposed to be really? And it was like the very beginning in those first few years of BigLaw being like, what are you supposed to do? Not just what you seem to be able to do. That was the beginning of like, okay, man, what's your difference here? And I think actually one memory always strikes me is doing this deal and, you remember whenever you're doing like in the intensity of a file or a deal and you're talking to like your client kind of all the time on the phone with somebody like 5 times a day. And I remember this partner was in my office. He was from the tax group and I'm talking to this client and he's, kind of my agent stage at the time. And I'm like, okay, got it, brother. Okay. See you soon, brother. I hang up and the partner looks at me. He's like, you're calling the client brother? And I was like, yeah, I mean, it just feels, we talk to each other 15 times a day. This feels, and then I saw something. I was like, this is how I feel like it should be done. So that was the beginning of what am I meant to do?
So then you decided that it didn't feel fulfilling. You talked about that, not just in the TED Talk, but on LinkedIn and other places. So you decided then to walk away from the practice of law. The aim of this podcast is to help lawyers build successful and happy careers. I walked away from the practice of law, and I know that as scary as it was, I knew it was the right decision for me. When you made that decision, how did it feel for you?
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%. There's never been a millisecond in my life. And I also am very appreciative of, I met my life partner there. Some of my best friends are still from there and got an incredible training. So it's not a slight on that place. I got amazing training, great experience. It was more that for me, it wasn't the right next phase of my career. And never for a millisecond have I ever thought that I should have stayed. Just like you, I gave up a lot of dough. Not being a partner at a law firm right now. It's probably like the biggest annuity that you could make as a lawyer, but there's never a second. And so when I was about 4 or 5 years out, a partner kind of said to me, we're washing dishes 3 a.m. on like a Tuesday or whatever. And she's like, hey, wouldn't it be amazing if one day we travel around the world together? And I couldn't really talk because I was like very tired, but this light bulb went off in my mind where I was like, that sounds right. And then a couple of days later, I came back to her and I'm like, okay, so your idea that we're going to like leave and travel around the world together, like, let's do this thing. She was 4 months away from becoming a partner. And she kind of looked at me like, what are you even talking about? That was a joke. But within 3 weeks, we didn't have a kid or a mortgage or anything at the time. But like within 3 weeks, we had like packed up our condo into a storage locker, ended our lease, tried to talk to the firm about, and go away temporarily, maybe come back, but never crossed my mind that it wasn't the right decision, even though I didn't know what the next thing was.
I want to come in here. I mean, I have a very similar career trajectory to you. But when I left the big commercial firm, and incidentally, I left on the day that I saw they have branded mineral water. When I left, I was actually quite depressed for a while, because it felt a bit like a failure. I mean, did you not have any of that?
I don't think so. I think it's because I was doing it because I felt like I was supposed to, not even really because I valued it personally. I didn't hold myself value, and not to say that you did, but like when I was reflecting on it, I don't think I thought, oh, you failed on this thing that you really wanted to do. I was just doing each next peg that I thought I was supposed to do. So when I left, I was like, well, okay, here's the options. I haven't really even thought about the future yet, but this is what I know. If I can be a partner at this firm, probably means I can be a partner at another firm. If I don't want to be a partner at a firm, but I'm good enough to do that, probably means I can be, a leader of a legal function. And if that doesn't work out, probably means I work hard enough and I'm smart enough to figure something else out. And I think the hardest part for me was I would have felt like a failure if I hadn't tried. That was the part that was really, so I actually felt more like a failure during the time, not when I left.
God, that's so interesting, isn't it? So something else that you talk about in the TEDx talk, which kind of links to this, but really, really stuck with me, was you talk about the survey that said about 50% of kids choose a profession based on their parents' influence. That was me. So one of that 50%, right, was me. Yeah. My dad particularly wanted a child that went into law, and I loved LA law when I was a kid. So it was like, okay, we'll have one of them that goes. And I felt at the time that it was just a good choice, and it was something that I wanted to do. Looking back, it probably wasn't. It was probably I was doing it because I wanted to make my parents proud, and my dad really wanted kids to go into those sorts of professions. Then in 2009, when I took a break from the law because the world had collapsed in the global downturn, my dad was apoplectic at the idea that I was going to leave the practice of law, go live in another country, and potentially leave this profession that was going to give me so much certainty. What was interesting was that I went back into the law about a year, 18 months later, and a couple of years after that, suffered burnout. But you then said, when a child goes to the parent and says to them, actually, I want to leave this profession, I don't want to do it, I want to pivot. 60% of parents feel disappointment. And I was like, oh my God, Chad, it's like Chad was talking to me because this is the experience that I felt I had. So when I went back in, Dad was happy, suffered burnout. Dad obviously not happy that I'd suffered burnout, and was fine. When I made that decision to leave, my dad was fine. What was so interesting was that years later, my dad said to me, I'm so proud of the choices that you've made. The decisions that you made to do those things, to come out of the law, to go down the route that you've taken now. He says, I never had it in me. I never had the confidence to take those kind of risks. He said, watching you flourish now. And it's really kind of poignant because Dad died last year and he had dementia in the years before he died. One of those last kind of conversations that we had before Dad really couldn't keep up with the conversations was he would tell me how proud he was of the things that I was achieving outside of the law, because he could see just on my face how happy I was.
That's really nice, man. Oh, I'm getting a little emotional. That was beautiful. Seriously, it's very beautiful. You know what I like about that is, I don't know if Elizabeth, this was the same for you, but like it's, people want the best for you at the end of the day. We talk a lot in an outcomes proxy style of conversation. So instead of saying, hey, Elizabeth, Scott, Chad, like really want you to be happy, want you to use all this talent that I can see in you, want you to have something that you feel passionate about, want you to thrive, also want you to be safe because I'm your parent, and so I want you to have some level of security for whatever it is the type of lifestyle that you want. Instead of saying that, because that requires like a lot of, obviously, like even mental training, because we're not trained to think and communicate that way. Instead, what we do is we give outcomes as proxies for that. Be a lawyer. Proxy statement. Yet we don't know that it's a proxy statement because we haven't been told to see that. And so then we take it as a commandment, because that's an important authority figure who we value and want to see be happy with us. And so it's actually less intentional than I think folks mean it. When I say folks, I think back to that study that you're referencing. Is I think what it is a proxy for a fear, anxiety, and hopes. And we just don't have the training and courage a lot of the time to just say what we feel without feeling like we're giving ourselves security by forcing a solution on someone else that we think delivers on our own fear. Imagine if we just said like, hey, Elizabeth, like care about you a lot, really want you to be happy. That's the most important thing to me. You're hilarious. You're funny. You're smart. You're resilient. I just want you to know that I think about it a lot because I care about you. And I just want you to be like safe and happy and thriving. I just wanted to let you know that. Like, that's very different than I'm having all of those emotional fears in my mind. And then I'm like, please go be a lawyer. Because in my mind, maybe it delivers it. But I think that's the gap. And like the intention's still the intention. But I think that outcomes communication style that a lot of us have been brought up with and deliver ourselves, it really muddies the water.
Now you made me emotional. I must have you introduce me sometimes. I think absolutely that you're right. It's very thought-provoking because I'm reminded at home while I was studying, I used to, I had a picture up on my wall of a BMW Z4. I don't even like cars, but I had this idea that this is what success looks like. And I think that's also a good example of a proxy. Am I understanding you correctly?
Totally is. It's like I have worked hard, been smart. People have recognized that and they're using money to demonstrate that. Otherwise, how would I have this car? Right. And so instead of just like doing those things that represent those, desires and hopes and emotions for ourselves, and then just being internally fulfilled and satisfied that whatever it is we chose to do represents those goals and dreams. Instead, we point at our car and we're like, well, how would it all be possible if I didn't have this sweet car? Right. And then we just expect, and then other people think that we're happy and then they don't check in on us because we're pointing at our car and we got the picture with the car. And so they're like, oh, you're good. Meanwhile, people are kind of losing it. Like that's what happened to me in BigLaw. Like I was really, even though I was having all these reflections, a lot of these reflections were coming out of the pain, and I knew that I was not going to be able to make an informed, thoughtful decision unless I took myself out of the river. Like I needed the space and then the like cognitive ability to be like, okay, well now you don't have anything. So let's design something instead of solutions being pushed on me. Oh, you're at this firm? Recruiter comes, why don't you come to this firm? Like it's very narrow in terms of what my life could be. And I actually needed it to be nothing so that it could then be anything.
I think that's a really, really valuable point because it does end up, people assume that we're happy because we are talking about certain tangible things that we can point to as implying success. But actually, very often there's a reason why the law struggles with stress and burnout and alcoholism and suicide. And again, coming back to purpose behind this podcast, and I do want to ask you, Chad, in a moment about purpose and what that kind of means to you. But one of the other things you talk about alongside natural gifts is having goals that mean a lot to you. And we talk a lot about the fact that a lot of lawyers get into the law because they want to help, they want to transform lives. They have this kind of purpose that very often they're driven by. From your experience as kind of both a lawyer and as a coach consultant, do you think that practice of law and the way that firms are structured, and here we go, Elizabeth, billable hours and bonuses and silos and the kind of hours that we are forced, or not for, but the hours that we feel we have to work, do you think that those things contribute to us losing sight of those important personal goals and purposes that we have for ourselves?
So I guess I have two thoughts. One is like on the surface, yes. I think my deeper thought, though, is that the law firm partner isn't coming to your room in the morning, taping you up in a bunch of tape and carrying you to the firm and forcing you to type, right? So yes, the model might not be helpful for everyone, but we've got to look in the mirror and like make hard choices. Like walked away from a lot of money in my time. I could have done a lot of things, bought a lot of things that I cannot buy because I walked away from that door. That was my choice, right? And so I guess my hopefully more thoughtful answer is, what does it mean to you? What do you want? What are you greatest at? What do you care about? Because I have one of my dearest friends from law school, when we were going through the interview process and we were just second year law school students, he finished his process and he said, I want to work at this specific firm in their securities litigation group. I had no idea what he was even talking about. He just became co-chair of that firm's security litigation group this week. So my more thoughtful answer is, what is it for you? Like, you're looking at the firm and kind of blaming them, and there's lots of like broken pieces in the model. But like for some people, it's actually what drives them. what speaks to their skills. It's how they want to work. It's what motivates them. And so what I would hope for with lawyers is like, yeah, lots of people don't work well in firms. Lots of people don't work well in in-house teams. Lots of people aren't great to be sole practitioners. Like, what is it for you that you want to do? Where are your gifts? What motivates you? What's the environment in which you thrive? Like, figure that out. And the path forward is a lot clearer, because you as an individual are not going to change any of those models overnight. What you can do is figure out how to explain your value and show up in an environment in which you will thrive and feel the best. So yes, lots of things wrong with law firm models, no doubt. I think from an individual's perspective is, are you doing the work to figure out where is the best place for you?
I think that's great. I often use clothes as a metaphor when I have this conversation, right? Because one of the reasons I left the law firm, apart from the branded mineral water, was also because I couldn't wear what I wanted. I'm a tomboy. There was no dress code for tomboys. So I kept getting into trouble because I'm not dressing like the either female, lawyers. And when I got into trouble, I was dressing like a man, which of course got me into more trouble. But I think that is part of the problem, or sometimes part of the problem, right? It's not the billable hour as much as it's also a lack of diversity sometimes, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. On all fronts. I think the diversity is like a great theme for everything. It's like the human element, the community element, the way of working, the business model. Like, it's pretty homogenous, generally speaking, on all of the fronts. The clothing one's a big one too. Like, it's very difficult for people to bring their best when they feel like they're pretending to be someone else. And so if you're like thinking about the outcome that you want from a business perspective, well, the way that it, at least in Canada, the way that it works is you have all these like eclectic folks coming through the system, cool backgrounds, interesting skills, whatever. And they get hired because they're interesting and smart. And then everyone, at least top line, is like meant to be pretty similar once you're like in there. And that's very difficult for a lot of folks over time. In the beginning, you can do it because you have all these motivators, but you make some money, you get some skills, you become a bit marketable, and over time it wears you down. And so whether it's the clothing piece that you talked about, whether it's the conversations that you can feel like you can have, the way of working, the way of building a business for yourself, there isn't a ton of diversity, but also this is not a shock, right? Like, I think if law firms want to continue to grow in the next phases, they should be caring about these things from a management level, but also we can't control that. But this is not a shock to us. And so if you don't want to spend your life in there, you got to break it down in components. Lots of great things about law firms in terms of training, compensation, often marketability. And so like, know the purpose for why you're going, and then start being reflective and intentional about what it is you want in the next phase. Not hoping that one relationship, whether it's personal or professional, is going to be all things for you.
One of the big things that you mentioned there is about being yourself. And I think so many lawyers would struggle with that. You have this idea of what a lawyer should be, should look like, should dress, should say, and that doesn't fit with how a lot of people feel, particularly nowadays. And I think that does contribute to a lot of stress, to a lot of illness. Firstly, do you see that, and do you see it changing? And how do they get to that point where actually they can feel free enough to be themselves?
Yeah, so I think on one piece, I do think there is, at least on the surface, some change. So, I left private practice about 10 years ago. I went back to my old firm a month ago to like visit some folks. And people who used to be in like full button-up suits were in jeans and boots and more casual on a Wednesday. It wasn't a Friday. And so I think like on the surface, there has been change. I think a lot of it has been forced change. I think COVID did some of this for us. I think new generations did some of that. So I think on the surface, there is at least some change. There's more understanding about parenting obligations, different kind of cultural needs, backgrounds. And so I think on the surface, there is some for sure. I don't think it's moving at light speed. The industry is quite reactionary on all fronts. Lawyers as individuals and institutions are pretty reactionary. So I think it'll take time. But I think as an individual lawyer, it's really about, in the beginning, sure, it's hard because maybe you don't even know who you are. But the more you start bringing out a little bit of who you are, whether it's like you start wearing like a little flower pin in your suit jacket, or you wear like some fancy socks, or whatever it is that's kind of your jam, people start to see you a little bit. And I think it becomes easier for them to help you because they know kind of a little bit more of your personal flavor. So you've got to like meet the moment of the environment in which you work, but bringing out a little bit more of your personal style in time makes you feel better, and it also lets people see you, and so they know how to help you. Did you feel like that when you both were in firms? Did you see anyone who was like, they're trying to bring out a little bit of their own personal flavor, or did you just feel like everyone was trying to toe the line?
Me. I tried, but I also, for a long time, I worked under a partner who had blue hair, but she did it.
I feel like, I feel like Elizabeth, this is just not happening for you at all.
But that was a cool story, though. I would love to work with a blue-haired partner.
But this is so kind of the interesting thing. I think part of the struggle that I felt was as I went up in my career, I felt more pressure to conform. I thought that I was expected to be, and I kind of really struggled with that. Actually, the first time I felt more like I could be myself was in that first break that I had from it in 2009. But then as soon as I went back into the law, I felt a bit more trapped again. And to be honest with you, I think that was I know it was, what contributed towards the burnout in the end was kind of that feeling of, I know I'm overworking, I know I'm really struggling, but struggling is a sign of weakness, and I've got to push through, and I'll push through and I will get through it eventually. And I just, in the end, I didn't. I look back now, Chad, and I don't do regret. I don't believe in it. I think everything that happens to us sets us on a path, and we give ourselves opportunities to get to the places that we want to get to. And this was the place that I feel, at least right now, I'm where I should be. And I love doing what I do, and I wouldn't be there without it. But I look back and I think, God, if I'd have been able to have talked to myself and just said certain things to myself and been more comfortable in who I was, that maybe didn't necessarily conform to the places that maybe I was working at the time, I'd been much happier in my career.
Well, I mean, I like that piece too about, if you're feeling like it's not going to be your future, you're probably not going to be there anyway. And so your downside is actually kind of like you're already trending that way anyway. And so we forward worry a lot about like, oh, if I'm myself, then I'm going to be disliked and maybe they won't want me here. And it's like, well, if you feel that strongly about it, then you're going to leave anyway. And it may not be like on your terms because you're going to just burn down and you're going to just have to walk away. And so I think that's actually another reason to be more of yourself, because the outcome is probably going to point that direction anyway. If you're taking on that much cognitive load of feeling like I'm pretending to be someone else and I'm unhappy, you're not going to do the best work that you can do. You're not going to feel great about it. You're going to leave anyway. And so what I think is like it's not a light switch, right? It's like starting to bring a little bit more of yourself into it all the time in terms of like how you like to dress or how you like to speak or, how you like to practice, whatever it is, so you feel like more of yourself. Because what often happens is we forecast worse than the reality ends up being, and you'll feel a little bit better along the way. And listen, if it doesn't work out, it wasn't meant to work out anyway, but you'll be more clear on who you are. People will have a better idea how to help you. It's very difficult how to help someone when they don't know who they are and what they want.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? I think the fact that we don't talk enough, I think there is this perception in the legal profession that admitting that you're struggling a bit is still seen as that weakness. I think that's why there's so many stories, particularly of young lawyers who have made a mistake, have hidden it, and have made the situation worse, and then have ended up in more trouble, or they've ended up being struck off. I think one of the things I would love to see in the profession is more senior lawyers talking about the struggles that they've had in their career and making it okay for young lawyers to talk about the struggles that they're having and not seeing it as a weakness. There's this beautiful book that I talk about all the time, Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. It's one of my favorite books. I read it over and over and over again. And it talks about how, you want to create great culture. Leaders have got to remember that they don't have all the answers, that it's okay to admit that you don't have all the answers, to create those spaces where people can make mistakes and it be okay. For me, I'd love to see the legal profession be so much more open to admitting that, yeah, we've all made mistakes and it's okay. And whatever happens, the mistake that you've made will never be so bad that it cannot be sorted out.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what is hard is because, folks in and around the industry have been asking for that, and, we don't see it enough. And I think one of the reasons why is when we think about only being being the sender of a communication, we don't see the benefit to us. And so then it makes people hesitant. And here's what I share with folks around that. If you're a partner at a law firm thinking like, why would I ever do that? Think about when you're the recipient of communication and someone is curious. So let's say like you give a junior, mid-level associate some work on your file. Do you prefer that that person says like, love working on this with you, super thrilled to do it. Here's 3 questions off the top that would like gear me in the right direction. Just because, you know, to be fair, I've done like very analogous things, but not this exact thing before. And I really want to do a great job on this. Do you like that? Or do you like someone who just says like, thank you, and that goes away? Like, of course, you want the person who's like curious and has like some level of humility and is honest and is like creating a dynamic conversation about who they are and their skills and how much they want to try. And that's what you want as the recipient. And so knowing that most humans would feel the same way, I would hope that that can encourage folks to be like, well, if you send that communication, that makes you more credible, more relatable. People trust you more. People want to work with you more. So, you know, if you're trying to see what's the benefit to you, think about it when you receive that type of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's that point of young lawyers when they're starting out, remember that you're training them. And so the whole point is that they come to you with questions and they come to you with curiosity, and your job is to give them the tools to be able to give you 100%. I think that's something that is kind of forgotten in the fast-paced world of the legal profession, that actually in there we're training the next generation of partners. Yep, listen, hey, we're living in a wild age with AI and the things that's how that's going to change. But we are training lawyers of the future. And so to give them the time, it's an investment into the future of the firms, the future of the legal profession. I think that's really important for everyone to understand, don't you?
I do. And if you're not as, you know, altruistic as that, it's like, it's better for you. Like associates that see you as a human, know that you have some humility, and know that you're investing in them. That's how you build a group of dedicated folks who are going to work hard for you on the work and in the hours that you can't or don't want to do. So whether you're altruistic about the industry or whether, and I don't care what the answer is, or whether you're purely focused on what's better for your personal practice, I don't care. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter, because either way we get to a better place. And so I think that's another kind of barrier, is that folks feel a lot of pressure about a very financially driven capitalistic mode of, well, how do I have time to care about the industry? Like, I worked hard, I grinded, they should do the same thing. Cool. I don't need you to be altruistic, but it's still better for you. You make more money, you work less, you get better work product. I don't care what your starting point is. But if you do the things that Scott, you're talking about, you get a more engaged, productive, retained talent force that's better for you. So whatever your starting point is, doesn't matter, but like that is a better result.
Yeah. Now, just so we are all clear, I haven't once again taken over the conversation with Chad, as much as I love chatting with him whenever I possibly can. It is the fact that Elizabeth keeps dropping out because I can't explain it. Not that I don't love it. You know,
Elizabeth is bored. It's like, oh my God. Do I have to listen to this?
I can't explain it either, except that my children might be streaming something. But anyway, it seems to be better now.
That's funny.
And I've come in on the arse end of that answer, but I think people also underestimate the cost of presenteeism, right? If you don't let people work on their own terms, then they're going to still show up, but they're not going to perform optimally.
Sure, that's going to be a bit performative, and they're going to do what they think they need to do. Ideally, you want them to be enjoying it and being the most productive that they can be. And so it's almost like being, like I was a big soccer, football guy growing up, and you can't lead everyone the way that you would be led. You have to figure out how people want to be led. Some people need an arm around the shoulder. Some people need a kick in the backside. Some people need like competition. Some people need the motivation of like, we got to win this thing. Like, everybody's different. That's okay. And so it's like being curious and having the humility of knowing that you don't know how everyone else is motivated, and there is no right and wrong. It's right and wrong for each person, and having the curiosity to figure it out so that you can help them be engaged on their terms. It's not like, oh, on their terms, they get to do whatever work they want. No, they have to produce, and they have to produce high quality stuff. This is high-end professional services, but there's different motivators to get there. And that's the unlock, I think, that we just have not put in enough energy to figure out. Because before, we didn't have to.
Yeah, I also think a lot of these things, you know, are kind of hereditary. I mean, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in South Africa, when you do your 2-year sort of training contract, and like I never set foot in a firm, and my university didn't teach me anything practical. So when I got there, it was sort of very, you do in the way that the partner who you're working under does it, and there's no room for learning different ways of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that's very common everywhere. I think you're right. I think what's happened now is there's probably never been a time where more novel industries have started. They've been started by folks that are earlier in their career and they want to hire their peers. Workplace has never been easier to work remotely. And I think so the optionality has massively increased. And I think that's been a big change from when many of us were starting our careers when there weren't that many options. And so the hereditary force was more captivating.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're not going to captivate these folks because they got too many options. And there's a lot of generational wealth being transferred. And so people aren't struggling in the same way and as desperate for the money in the same way that it might have been before. So I think you're right, but I also think that reactionary push is what we're seeing the beginning of right now, where folks are like, no, thanks.
Yeah, it's the South African firms all have said that it's the first time in history that trainees actually resign. Like in my time, that was unthinkable. But a lot of them are going, actually, this is not for me, and I don't need to complete my training contract to work in the legal services. That is unprecedented, but I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, and I went in-house for like the second half of my career and loved that more, but it still wasn't really my thing. And after doing my coaching and advising piece for a couple of years, like now I'm at Goodlawyer, which is like an alternative legal service provider. And really the magic is it's like providing lawyers with the opportunity to build careers in the way that you're talking about. I can do it my way, this much scope, this type of clients, this length of mandate. When I was a GC, I had fractional legal services. I purchased it because, well, if I can get an Elizabeth at like the time and way that I need, instead of having to beg for FTE headcount or having to train up a junior who could be smart, but it's going to take, a ramp in order to get where I want. Maybe I don't have the capacity of work on a consistent basis. Versions of this are now creating opportunities for lawyers to make a lot of money in a way they can control their life. And sometimes they say to me, hey, Chad, me and my family were going to go live in Costa Rica for 2 months. So I want all my mandates to end by this date. Give me some leave coverage if you want, but like I'll come back on in September. But that's what I do now. And you're like, good for you, and they can make a lot of dough. And the buyers of services get services from folks that are like the right fit for what they need at the time they need it in a way that works within their budget. This is like very available now. And I think that's the education piece that is just starting to hit the market, which is also pulling folks out of these traditional paths that didn't find a nice fit there. And that just wasn't so, at least apparently available when many of us were growing up. The model has existed, but the education is now becoming much more visible through places like LinkedIn.
Right. So at the end of each show, we ask guests 4 questions designed to get your thoughts on the legal profession as it is and how it could be. So you can give our listeners some ideas of how they could possibly design their legal careers, no matter where they are at. So question 1, what advice would you give a lawyer just starting out in the profession?
I would say one thing you can do that's quick and free and do it on your own is ask 3 people in your life from different elements of your life: friend, family member, coworker, former coworker. What is something you've seen me do to lift others that didn't require a carrot or stick, an incentive or threat for me to do it?
Wow.
Have you seen me lift people? What you will find, and I've asked this question to hundreds of lawyers, what you will find in the answers is 75% the exact same words. The other 25% is the same theme in different words. Why is that? And it's important to ask people from different phases of your life to help bring this out. It's because that's who you are. That's how you like to help people. That's how you would help people without being motivated or threatened to do it. And you've always been doing it because it's natural for you. It's easy for you. This is the beginning of figuring out like what your unique gifts are. And so if you know that, it doesn't mean you stop working at the firm immediately, but what that tells you is these are my like 8.5s out of 10s. 5 out of 10s, I'm sorry, they're never going to become 8 out of 10s for most people. You can work super hard at your 5 out of 10s. They might become 5.5s or 6s, but your 8.5s out of 10s, these are very specific to you. And if you push energy at them, you can make them 9.5 out of 10s because they're very natural. You're very inclined. It's amazing energy and it's unique to you. That collection of skills is unique to you. That's where you start to find impact. So if you're beginning your career, I'm not saying don't continue in the traditional path if for a variety of reasons you want to do that, but start understanding where your unique value proposition is. For most people, it's not just going to be knowing the law and being there longer. That's a bit of a commodity.
I think I'm stealing that, if you don't mind. I think that's such a great way
go for it.
to reconnect with who you are, because I think we forget that over time. Our second question is, what is the one thing about the legal profession you wish would change, and how do you think that change is going to happen?
I wish more lawyers felt like they enjoyed being a lawyer. It's a very funny industry, and it wasn't until I had a friend of mine who lives in Gibraltar, actually. I think I had mentioned him to you before, Scott. He works a very intense job, and we were, years ago both talking about the intensity of our job, but his intensity wasn't a negative intensity. His intensity was like, yeah, I mean, I love this industry. I love this work. I'm good at it. I get paid well for it. I like it. And mine was, I'm good at it, but I don't really feel like I'm more motivated after doing the work. I'm more tired after doing the work. And so I think that's the thing that I would hope for from the industry, is that when you do the work, and this can exist in law firms too, like my friend that I told you about, yes, he works very, very hard, but he gets a lot of energy out of being a great securities litigator. So what I would hope for the industry is that more lawyers are doing things where after you do the work, yes, you can be a little bit mentally tired from like the effort, but do you feel emotionally lifted? I am going to feel more emotionally lifted after this conversation than before, because I love this kind of thing. And so that's what I would hope for more lawyers, is to do a sense check, a pulse check on the work that you do, and notice when you feel more emotionally lifted after doing the work. I think that would make for a better industry and happier lawyers.
I kind of feel as though that comes from some of the things that you talked about earlier. Is this really what you want to be doing? Is this really what you love? I realized late on that actually it wasn't the legal work I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed winning the work. I enjoyed getting to know clients. I enjoyed helping them find solutions. The actual legal work I wasn't interested in. And so therefore, as Elizabeth pointed out, that the one thing she did agree with was that I wasn't a good technical lawyer. But that was the bit that I didn't enjoy so much. And so, but I think it goes back to a lot of things that you said earlier. Question number 3, what's a common myth about success in the legal profession that you feel needs to be debunked?
I think it's that whoever the authority is in front of you is like, that's the definition of success. And it's not. It's you have to put in the work to figure out what success means to you. And that's hard. Just being a derivative of someone else's life, it's not that hard. You're just mirroring and like pretending to be them. Sure, it takes energy and work, but it's not hard. It's not creatively hard. You know what it is like actually defining it for yourself and having the courage to do that, and knowing that it could look and sound and feel different than what other people are doing. That's hard. And so if you start doing that, though, it gives you a lot of freedom to pursue something that's very meaningful to you, and you'll actually care a lot less about the social and professional pressures around you, because that won't be your definition of success anymore.
It wouldn't unmute. I am having a bit of a day. Right, so the last question is, and I think I know what you would answer, what would it look like if you could design the ideal legal career path?
I think it would be something where you felt like 80% of the time the actions you were taking were things that you would do if you weren't getting paid, and that you were driving those actions towards a theme that you feel like is meaningful for you. Whatever the outcome is, the outcome is. I don't think that's not the relevant part. I think it's if you feel like 80% of the time you're like, even if I wasn't getting paid, I would love to do this, and it speaks to some sort of theme that you feel like is making an impact in the way that you want to impact the world. That's what I think the ideal career path is.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Before Elizabeth says goodbye on behalf of all of us, Chad, tell us how people can get in touch with you. Tell us how they can get in touch about Goodlawyer if they're thinking about that career change. Tell us about the podcast, everything that you want people to know.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you for having me. So yeah, you'll find me on LinkedIn for sure if you just look at my name. And then on the Goodlawyer front, especially if you're in Canada or the US and you're thinking about building a career path that's specific to you and is outside what we think the traditional model is, there's an incredible way to work with wonderful brands on a very specific scope and amount of time. And like you can design a career that's meaningful for you. And so you can go to Goodlawyer's website, find me on LinkedIn, reach out, send a DM, because what I really want to do is to help people design a career that actually makes them happy, so that when it all comes at the end of the day for all of us, we feel like, hey, I gave it the best kick at this can that I could. And that's what I feel like, I really want for everyone.
A big thank you to Chad for coming on the show and sharing his wisdom. We've been your hosts, Scott Simmons and Elizabeth Stadler, and this has been Legal Off the Leash.